So, as I believe Josie said, my name is Kirsty and I work as a designer at Territorial. Before we start, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'm assuming that some of you know a lot about your websites and others of you know very little. I'll be explaining myself in as much detail as possible to keep you all in the loop as we go. In the webinar listing, I've defined a few keywords that you might not be familiar with. Feel free to keep those open in another window as a reference. If you have any questions or answers to my questions, please write them in the chat window. My coworker Sarah and I will be taking some time at the end to answer your questions. As a heads up, this webinar won't be taking the full hour today, but I suppose we have 10 minutes added to the beginning of it because of those technical difficulties. Thanks again, everyone, for being a part of that. So let's get started. So with that out of the way, we're going to talk about how you can future-proof your website against business crises. Crises like losing the person on your team that deals with your website, if the agency that made your website folds, or if they're hard to get a hold of and you decide to find a new agency. By the end of this webinar, you'll be armed with the right questions to ask in order to create your company's website crisis toolkit. So first we'll be talking about your content management system, also known as a CMS. This is the interface where all of written and photo content appears on your website and where you can enter it. CMS systems are great because they allow you to update your content whenever you like. So any of you, how many of you have CMS systems on your website currently? And how many of you don't know if you have a CMS? You can answer that in the chat window. Thanks, guys. That's great. So tip number one, if your website is being built with a CMS, you should ask your web agency to use open source software. Some agencies will build their own CMS software. This might sound secure and specialized, but it traps you as their client. If you have any desire to switch agencies, your new service provider will have to start from scratch. We usually recommend WordPress and Shopify to our clients, as both of them have a long-standing history with CMS, large online communities of development support, and allow us to build a custom design on top of their system. So CMS tip number 2 is asking your agency for administrative access to your CMS account. This will be a username, password, and URL that allow you to sign in and change the content. Even if you're happy with your original content, having this information is like having keys to the car that you've paid someone else to build. And it's extremely important if you eventually need to switch agencies or your agency folds or something like that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is hosting conditions. Your website needs both a host and a domain. A host is what gives your website a place on the internet, and the domain is the URL. So first, you want to make sure that your domain name is registered under your business, not your agency's. You'll want to ask for access to the website hosting and domain registrar credentials. Often, the company that your agency uses will provide both of these services, both the hosting and the domain registration. And in that case, you'll only need one set of credentials. Either way, you should receive a username, password, and URL, or 2 of each if they're being done at 2 different places online. Something that occasionally catches people off guard is that these things come with a renewal fee. It might be every year or every 3 years. You can bet that you'll need to renew it. Why, you might ask? One of the most famous stories about renewing a domain is about Microsoft. In 1999, Microsoft forgot to renew one of their domains, and Hotmail, which was super popular at the time, along with many other Microsoft products, became inaccessible to their hundreds of thousands of users. Someone bought the domain out from underneath Microsoft for a grand total of $35, and Microsoft bought it back from them for $500 because it was so incredibly important to their business. So you can imagine why that would be a good thing for you to renew so that you don't lose it to someone else. The next important thing about hosting and domains that you need to know is reselling. So in some cases, hosting is a service that is resold by agencies, and for good reason. It's a very technical skill set. That being said, you should ask for clarifications and details and take notes for reference. You want to ask things like, physically, where are the servers that are hosting your website? Who's the host? And that will likely be a company name. We use a company in town called Varial. You want to find out if the host is local. You want to ask, do they provide good, quick service? Find out how long they've been in business. And don't be afraid to ask your agency to give you references from their other clients about the hosting that they're using. If you talk to one of their other clients and find out that their website regularly crashes and they've been hacked, you know what you're in for. And it's not good, so I wouldn't recommend going with them. By having a local, reliable host, you're buying yourself peace of mind, knowing that if your website goes down, your agency can easily track down the person who needs to fix it. So have any of your websites gone down from time to time, or have you lost client sales because of it? I guess I also don't know if you guys have services attached to your emails. But while I was writing this webinar, our team started talking about our own experiences. And Darren told me the most amazing one about hosting. There was a time about 10 years ago when we hosted our websites with a big hosting company, and the building where our servers were caught on fire. Typically, these things are solved in a day, maximum. But for some reason, after 2 days of all of the websites being down and their servers had thousands, they realized that they weren't going to be able to fix the power issue that the fire caused. So they ordered a huge backup generator to be trucked in and save the day. But the generator hookup ended up taking days, and finally, after 7 days of thousands of websites being down, their backup generator finally kicked in and brought their servers back to life. This meant that the websites were back up, but in an entire week of sales and clients that the websites supported were lost. So next, and finally about hosting and domains, we're going to talk about email accounts. So the last thing you need to know is that sometimes you can get email accounts at the same time as your website hosting that will have your company name and email, like kirsty@territorial.ca. If this idea comes up with your agency, ask them to use G Suite or Office 365. G Suite is Google and Office 365 is Microsoft, as you'll be more familiar with those words than G Suite and Office 365. So you want to ask for those to be your email hosting system, one of those. They'll cost you about $6.50 per person per month for a basic account, but the expense is totally worth it. It gives you control, flexibility, and a wealth of support resources. At Territorial, we use Google or G Suite for our emails, which are then connected to our online Google Drive storage, documents, sheets, presentations, calendars, and more. So now we're moving on to service logins. I've got a question for all of you. Did your agency or whoever you're working with create your company accounts for things like Google Analytics, MailChimp, and social media? Because sometimes an agency will create and manage all of your accounts. And while it seems convenient, it also means that they have administrative rights, which translates into full account control. If you decided to leave them for another agency, or if they go out of business, your accounts may become inaccessible. So the solution is to create your own accounts. Creating social media accounts is pretty straightforward, and most of us have done it. But if you're unfamiliar with Google Analytics, just visit analytics.google.com, as you can see on the slide, to sign up. Once you've made the account, you can grant access to your agency. Some platforms, like MailChimp, even offer developer account access. Your agency might need administrative access for some of your accounts, and that's perfectly fine, assuming that you trust them. However, once the work is done or the project is complete, it's best to change or remove their permissions. This is super important for businesses that have confidentiality involved, like counseling services. In the past, a counseling client had me as an admin on their Facebook account, and not only could I access messages from their clients and prospective clients, I was getting notifications on my phone showing me their names, faces, and messages. That's definitely not a situation that you want to put your clients in. So now, last but not least in this presentation is contracts. You want to build contracts that work for and protect you. One of the first things you want to have in your contract is a well-defined website warranty. When a problem comes up, you want to have a clear process for fixing it. Make sure that you've discussed and have a clear understanding of the difference between a website bug and a new feature. Be involved in the website testing as much as possible. Click through the pages, buttons, and links. Fill out any text fields. Look at it on a laptop, a phone, and a tablet. Make sure that you find and identify anything that isn't working or isn't working the way you want it to, and let your agency know. Hopefully, they'll be doing this as well, but you might be able to catch something that they miss. By testing it, you can work with your agency to make it stronger and avoid any unfortunate surprises after they've declared it finished. So you might expect to own everything on your website after paying an agency to make it, but that's not always the case. So for example, let's say you got super duper design agency to make your website. They design your website and they build it on top of WordPress's CMS. Then for some reason or another, you decide to leave super duper design and work with Territorial. Territorial would take all of the logins and information that you have from the questions we went through earlier and start working on your website. We can use the CMS and plugins from WordPress without any issues because it's open source. But there's a chance that when we go live with your website, Super Duper Design could come to Territorial and say, hey, you can't use that website design. We own the copyright for the designed features on that page. And even though you love the way your website looks, we would have to design you a new website, which would mean more work hours and a greater cost to you. All of that to say, having the unlimited, unrestricted global license that's mentioned on this slide to your agency's work in your contract protects you if you're moving forward. So the next thing that you want to understand and navigate in your contracts is indefinite maintenance and retainers. You want to understand exactly what you're getting if you choose to pay an agency for indefinite maintenance or a retainer. These types of contracts aren't as common as they once were, but it's good to be aware of. In most cases at Territorial, we have clients set up to approach us when they need work done. You pay for what you get, and you get things when you need them. Indefinite maintenance and retainers are ongoing financial commitments, and you'll want to make sure that the value you receive is equal to the price that you're paying. This might be the right route for you and your company, But if someone is trying to sell you on it, you have the right, and it's perfectly okay to ask why and make sure it's worth it. So that is the entirety of our presentation. If you follow those best practices, ask the questions, and keep your notes all together, you'll be set to stay on top of your website and digital ecosystem no matter what happens. Now the floor is open for questions. I see that there aren't a ton in the chat, but if you have any, now is the time to put them there. I'll be going through them, and I'll be pulling in my coworker, Sarah Eder, like I mentioned earlier, and she's our lead developer, and she'll be answering any of the technical questions that I don't know the answers to. I'll just give you guys a minute there to write any questions that you might have, and if you don't have any, we will move on. Sure. You want to handle that one, Sarah?
I can take this.
Okay, so the question that Sarah is going to be talking to is from Cheryl, and she asked, could you talk more about the analytics and MailChimp and what value we can get from exploring these?
All right, so first off, I'll talk about analytics. So that is basically a program. If you sign up through Google Analytics, you add some code to your website, and then whenever someone visits your website, Google actually collects information about them. So when you get analytics, then you're able to log in and see how many people have been on your website that day. Often you can see like even where they're from. You can also follow where like the pattern that they followed through your website. So if they started on the home page and then they clicked the about page and then they clicked the contact page, then you know what flow they're taking through your website. It gives you an idea of what content is most important to your users, and then it gives you the opportunity to work more on that content, because the best content basically means the best performance in search engines. So yeah, Google Analytics is a great tool for that. Basically, you can create your own account, and as long as you give access to your agency or whoever's working on your website, that's really, really easy to set up. The other thing is, so in terms of MailChimp, that's a service that we use in, there's a number of other ones, but it's a newsletter program. So basically, it gives you a form that you can put on your website, so people can sign up for your newsletter, and then you can just do targeted mail outs to the people who have signed up. So that's a good way of getting people to engage. And Kirsty's good at the content stuff, so I'll let her take over here.
Oh, I work with MailChimp for our company, and we use our newsletters to either send out and just add value to our clients' lives by telling them about progression in industry or things that they should know. But you could use it if you are having a sale, or these are all of the things that pollute your inbox on a daily basis if you've signed up on anything online. Yeah, so by exploring those, you just have the opportunity to understand your online presence better with analytics and how you can improve it. And then with MailChimp, you can reach out to people. So simply having those things in your name protects you from if you have something go wrong with your agency. And then the next question that we've got here is from Laura, or Lara, and it says, if you don't have a website yet, but are planning to build your own, would you still recommend WordPress or Shopify as the best option?
And I will take that one. This is Sarah again. In terms of if you want an e-commerce, so if you're using a store, then definitely Shopify, I think, is the best option out there. In terms of just a plain website without any e-commerce, WordPress is really great. So you can set like up a free site, and then you can download different themes. So just not a lot of The only thing is there's not a lot of customizability that way. But yeah, there's tons and tons of themes out there. You can buy them. There's some that are free. A lot of different options there. The great thing about WordPress is that it is really extensible. So if you then decide later that you want to get a developer in to help you add some feature, then it's really easy to do that. If you know that you just want a really, really simple website, there's options like Squarespace out there that people really like using. And it is, yeah, it just means that you're not going to be able to really customize it a lot in the future if you do decide to bring on a developer. They'd probably have to redo it in another platform. But it just depends what level of complexity you want in your website.
Hmm. So, next question just came in from Jody. It says, what is an average price in this market for a non-templated WordPress site? I feel like I was overcharged. Thanks.
You know, I don't know average prices. Also, I'm not sure about non-templated WordPress sites. Like, did they build you, like, did they just install a normal template, like a template from someone else, or I don't know.
Or did they design it themselves, like we've talked
So,
about?
because I'm confused about your usage of non-templated, I guess.
Can you describe that for us, Jody?
Okay, so that is okay. So that's like a custom template. Um, you know, there's not really such thing as an average price. It kind of depends. You know, it could run you anywhere from probably like $1,000 to like $80,000,
That
depending on the complexity. So it's really hard to say. There's no real average price. It really depends on what what you got them to do.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit more. Um, yeah, in some cases you can find very low prices for these things, but you'll find that they have work that falls apart or that doesn't do well on responsive. That means going from your desktop to your laptop, or sorry, your desktop computer to your phone, and the different sizes. There's actually a service that we came out with recently, and it's $8,500 for a 3 to 5 page website. And so that that might not be average, but we stand behind our work and make sure that it stands the test of time.
And yeah, in terms of cheaper prices, definitely you'll want to watch out for some places use plugins for WordPress, so they're not doing their own custom development. They're basically just doing something that you could learn how to do in 2 weeks and charging you too much for it. So really check what kind of work they're like. Ask them for examples of their work and talk to their clients and just kind of get an idea of what their like what kind of experience their clients have had in terms of using their WordPress. If it's slow and clunky, that means that they've done a poor job. If it's quick and it does everything that they want it to, then that means that they've done a great job and worth whatever they're paying for, probably.
Hmm. It's very much a you get what you pay for kind of thing. Except that hopefully you're not overpaying for low quality work. Uh, Anyways, that I think answers Jody's question from her responses. Thanks. Um, Julie asked, I created a website myself through WordPress. How easy or hard is it for someone else to modify it, but allow me to also keep control?
All right, so this is the confusing thing about WordPress is that the software that is open source and that you can install anywhere is called WordPress.org. And then you can also get a WordPress.com account, and that means that WordPress is hosting all of your website and that kind of thing. So on WordPress.com, if that's what your website is through, basically you just have to give them full access, like basically just give them the username and password that you log in with. So that means you have as much control as they do, just then they have your password, so it comes with the risk associated with sharing your password. In terms of like if you're hosted somewhere else other than WordPress.com, but still using the WordPress software, you can give people access to the code. There's ways of, yeah, It just depends what exactly you want to be able them to modify. If you want them to be changing content, you can give them a username with only access to edit your blog posts or whatever. If you want someone to be doing development, adding more functionality, then you do need to give them full control. So you could create another username for them, but they'll still have the exact same amount of control as you.
Yeah, so with all of that, I'll speak to it a little bit too, is that you won't get shut out from your system. Sarah just made a face at me there. You'll still have access to your CMS unless something went horribly wrong and they decided to cut you out of that, which is I'm guessing, highly unlikely. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yeah, you don't go with an established company. A lot of you don't want to trust the freshest freelancer, basically, unless they have a good track record. But yeah, basically just get someone professional to do the work.
Yeah. And like Sarah mentioned earlier, and I mentioned earlier in the presentation, just ask people if you can talk to their clients or find out who their clients are and ask them what they think of the agency. Clients will be the greatest teller of if there's someone that you want to work with or not. So hopefully that answers everything for you, Julie. I see. Okay. Laura, could you comment on some of the tie-ins and add-ons, I'm not sure of the phrasing, that are pretty popular to use? So you mentioned you can use MailChimp to link to your newsletter. What else is hip out there right now? Specifically for newsletters, is that what you're wondering, Laura? Or are you just wondering what other digital services you can use as a company? Oh, okay. Hmm. It's interesting because I feel like some things just depend on your company and what your company needs. Yeah. Sorry, I'll let Sarah speak to this just a little bit.
Yeah, so in terms of tie-ins, so analytics is great. That's really popular, as well as the MailChimp newsletter kind of thing. Otherwise, I think one of the other really popular thing is just social media tie-ins. So, for example, if you are writing a blog, you can add like Facebook comments onto that, so then it would be accessible through Facebook, as well as even just displaying your Instagram photos, that kind of thing. So there are plugins within WordPress, for example, that you would enter in your username and they would get your posts. Yeah, so definitely add your Instagram background feed, as I see from Wes there. I can't think of anything else that's really popular right now. Those few are things that just really help dial into your your customers. Like with MailChimp, you're able to contact them very often. You're able to stay on the top of their minds, tell them interesting new things that your business is doing, or even just other interesting things that keep them engaged with you. Mm-hmm. So that, along with other social media, does that. And then in terms of analytics, basically it's just spying and knowing what's going on with your site.
Analytics, yeah, really can inform some of your decisions. If I remember correctly, Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but with Google Analytics, you can find out some of the demographics of the people who are coming to your site. So with one of our previous clients, they were a hotel, and we found out that a lot of people who were coming to their website were people who really liked cooking and visited cooking websites all the time. So we thought, oh, well, that's a fantastic way that we can speak to those people more on this website, is by addressing the outdoor cooking sites nearby. And so that was a great thing about analytics. Sarah's nodding, so I am remembering that correctly. Other than that, for integrations, yeah, social media, the main ones are Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But Pinterest, depending on your business. Again, it's just kind of understanding who your people are and who you're trying to reach and what they're on most often. Uh, there's no point in splitting your limited resources or your limited time between a lot of different social media platforms when if you focus on one and put really valuable content there, you might be speaking more knowledgeably and using your time more effectively. Yeah. You're welcome. So Wes asked, do you have any good/bad experiences with the Facebook Pixel?
No, I've never actually looked at what data that people get from the Facebook Pixel. I have put them on people's websites, but I haven't actually taken a look at the data, so I can't answer that one very well, I'm sorry to say.
Unfortunately, I can't either, but that does remind me of something that's just kind of interesting, is that things like Facebook and Instagram will be updating their applications all the time. And sometimes that will choose what access you have to the, how do I explain that? The plugins that you might be using on your website might break when Facebook or Instagram updates. We had that happen with a couple of people where, let's say on a website, we were pulling all of the pictures from Instagram that were hashtagged with their business. And then Instagram changed and wouldn't let you pull that information anymore. So sometimes if something breaks, it might not necessarily be just a technical piece of that plugin isn't working. Sometimes it's that things change. Thanks, Wesk. Yeah, maybe that's something for us to, I guess we just don't have as much involved with it. It's the businesses that have it, that have been looking into it more.
Well, Facebook Pixel, like it provides analytics in terms of like what people are clicking on your website, and then it sends it to Facebook. So basically, it's just another branded analytics solution. I just haven't taken a look at exactly what data you get. So sure, it's, Facebook puts out good stuff, so I'm sure it's fine.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Are there any other questions before we shut down here and let you guys have 15 minutes of your lunch back? You're welcome, Kelly. Oh, yeah, that would be great of us. So I'm just going to put my email, Kirsty's email, in the feed here, and you can email me with other questions if you want. There you go. And if you want to know anything about Territorial, the company that Sarah and I work for, you can find it there at territorial.ca. So thank you guys very much. And it sounds like Josie has her microphone turned back on. Oh. Nope. Okay. I guess I'll say goodbye then. And thank you guys so much for your time.
All right, great. Thanks, Kirsty and Sarah, for all that information today. I feel like we have a web crisis toolkit now, so that's perfect. Just to remind everybody that tuned in today, this webinar will be up on our website within about a day or two, so you can always visit wesk.ca to watch this again. We do have actually another webinar coming up on November 20th, and it is called How to Skyrocket Your Business with Listing and Reviews, so it's all about Google. And this is presented by Barb McGrath of Above the Fold Canada. So registration is now open for that on our website as well. And that again is wesk.ca. So bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in today and have a great day.
Bye.